Thank you guys for coming. We're going to kick things off here in about 25 seconds. So set your timers. In 25 seconds, we're starting. So you want to grab some seats up front. Don't worry, I don't bite. Some of our panelists might, though, so be careful. Yes. Thank you guys for coming out. I think the first panel is the usability, right?
No.
Oh, it's me. It's the importance of cross-chain functionality. Got it. So I think we need one more panelist up here then, correct? Or is this the three? This is it? All right, we got it. See, we're figuring it out on the fly. How you guys doing? Is everyone enjoying the ETHCC week? All right, that's good. Well, you're in for a treat tonight. We have some fantastic panels. We have some fantastic guests. I want to thank you guys for taking time out of the busy ETHCC season to stop by this first of many kind of kickoff to a lot of Cosmos activities going over. Whoa, there we go. All right. Going on the next few days here. So there's tonight's meetup, and then we have Nebular Summit and OsmoCon. There's probably other Cosmos-based activities that are happening. So who here has never heard of Cosmos? Just raise your hand. Oh, wait, two? All right, sorry, you guys got to go. Sorry, it's only for people that know Cosmos. So can someone get security? Can we get these guys out of here? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Well, and then we're back again to being quiet. Can you still hear me? I can't tell. So I want to thank you guys for being here. As a quick introduction, my name is Adam Wozni. I head up community for Overclock Labs, the creators of the Akash network. This is the last event I'm doing after 2 weeks of events. So can we get a round of applause for me? All right, I appreciate that, thank you. But you're not here for me, we're here for our panelists, so I want to kick off our first talk all about the importance of cross-chain functionality for Cosmos and Web3 success. So can we get a quick round of applause for our panelists, and we're going to do an introduction. I'm moderating this, right? I hope so. All right, well, I'm moderating now. So why don't we go around the horn and quickly introduce ourselves, and we'll get started.
Yep. Hi. Testing? Great. Hi, I'm Candice. I'm the head of PR and communications from NIM Technologies. There's NYM, NIM. So at NIM, we are developing a solution to integrate network level privacy. So we are chain and web agnostic. So if anybody here, is not from Cosmos ecosystem, which I hope they are, feel free to come and have a chat with me and my dev row later on.
Only those two right there, only Cosmos noobs.
They're going to talk to you later. Are you even from Web3? No champagne.
They're spies from Web2, let's get them.
Cool.
Okay, cool, let's hand it off to Lisa. Feel free to introduce yourself.
Hi, yeah, I'm Lisa Loud, and I'm the Executive Director of Secret Network Foundation. I have just joined the network, so I'm really excited to be here. Secret is providing privacy as a service. We have been going for quite some time, a few years, and we're in the Cosmos ecosystem, but we also provide privacy as a service to other systems, other blockchains and layer ones. So this panel is highly relevant to us. I'm excited to talk about cross-chain.
Cool, thank you, Lisa. And finally, Fabian, feel free to introduce yourself and let folks know what you do at KYVE.
Yes, hi. I'm Fabian. I am the, everyone can hear me, I guess. Yeah. I'm the co-founder of KYVE Network. We are building a decentralized data lake based on the Cosmos SDK. And we are very data agnostic, so this is kind of like our play into the interoperability game. We can store data from like any blockchain, any data source. But I guess we hear more about it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought a good way to kind of kick off our conversation on cross-chain functionality is actually a definition given to me by ChatGPT on cross-chain functionality. I thought it's just a good way to level set, right? So I'll just read this off and then we'll kind of get into our question. So as defined by ChatGPT, cross-chain functionality refers to the capability of different blockchain networks or decentralized platforms to interact and exchange information, assets, or services seamlessly. Blockchain networks are often designed as isolated systems, meaning that they have their own protocols and data structures, which can be communication and which can make communication and interoperability between them challenging. That sounds right, yeah? Would you all agree? Any issues with that definition? Does that feel?
ChatGPT says so, then it must be, right?
That's what I'm hoping, right? Used to use Webster's dictionary, but now it's ChatGPT dictionary. So I kind of want to dive into that a little bit more. So this is kind of a question we can maybe start with you, Fabian. Can you briefly describe how your project supports cross-chain functionality? And at a very high level, can you tell us how your respective project handles the technical complexities of achieving cross-chain interoperability? Big question.
Yeah, it's a long question though. No. So how do we do it at KYVE? So basically at KYVE, as I said, we are a Cosmos SDK-based chain, and for the two people unfamiliar with Cosmos, on Cosmos you can send data around other Cosmos chains using IBC. That's kind of like how they have their interoperability between all the Cosmos chains. And actually, we started out not as a Cosmos chain, but actually being fully, working with and on Arweave. Arweave is a data storage solution, and so we had a smart contract there, and then over time, I think over the course of a year roughly, we can really realized that we needed like our own app chain, and this is how we tapped into the Cosmos ecosystem and are building our own SDK chain there. But since the beginning, we were always working with kind of like the other ecosystems, the other chains to create the data archives there. We started storing EVM chains first, and then we kind of like extended from there into other, basically all the data sources and chains out. And how do we deal with it? I think our approach is that we have a very interface-like version. So basically, it's very easy to work with KYVE because if you're a developer active in the other ecosystem, you can just write your own runtime. You just have to define yourself, like how do you get the data? And this is what every developer in the other ecosystem, so to say, is familiar with the most, right? Like how do I fetch data from my blockchain and things like this? And then basically KYVE then gives the rest of the framework around it so that you actually don't even have to deal with kind of like the hurdle, so to say, of like, oh, how do I bridge this data from A to B, and how do I connect my chain with the other chain, and the data here and there. It's really just about, oh, this is how I get my data, and then KYVE is the one handling the rest on that.
Excellent. Kind of want to pass it over to you, Lisa. So could you briefly describe how your project supports cross-chain functionality?
Sure. So Secret is in the Cosmos ecosystem for a reason, and that's because we have cross-chain support in Cosmos. So IBC is a big part of our cross-chain functionality, but that's not enough. We need to support privacy in all of the chains. So we have develop privacy as a service, as I mentioned, which means that you can mint, so you can do most of your application in Ethereum or Solana or whatever, and then anything that needs to be, any smart contract that needs to handle private data or it needs to be private, you can mint that on the Secret network, and that one part of your application that needs to maintain privacy can be on the Secret network. So this is something that we've been working on a long time. I think it's a big hole in the whole blockchain ecosystem. We all know about Arkham's announcement that they're trying to get unmask all of the blockchain whales out there, or just regular people, all of the wallets. So that's something that is a bit scary, right? Like everything you do is out there now. So we need to have some form of confidentiality, some form of privacy for like medical records or anything that is financial. You don't share your bank information with everybody. So because of that, privacy as a service for every application is a super useful thing. And one thing that's really cool is we actually can wrap any token that's sent to the Secret network so that it has privacy, it has a layer of indirection, and that everything can't be seen on that token. Of course, if you have the key, if you have the special key to unlock that data, it can be read. So you can do your accounting, you can do your taxes. If regulatory authorities need to see your data, you can provide that. But at the same time, it's not open to everybody.
What do you mean it's not open to everybody? What do you mean by that?
Most data on blockchain is open to everybody. It's like you can read it. If you know how to read it, you can read it. And then now these services like Arkham are making it much easier for you to read. But regardless of whether Arkham is there or not, anybody who knows what they're doing, any hacker, can find out what is going on chain, because it's completely transparent, right? So that's a problem. Like, not everything needs to be transparent in our lives, I hope. I don't want everybody to know which flight I'm taking and where I'm going to be and when my house is going to be empty. All of these things should be kept private and confidential. So blockchain has a big problem for mass adoption because of this challenge.
I feel like we could talk about that subject alone all night, but I want to give some time here to Candace. So yeah, how does NIM support kind of interoperability?
Yeah, so I'm not going to turn this into a privacy panel, but I have to talk about privacy, right? So we are a little bit different from Secret. So I think I mentioned previously that we provide privacy at a network level, at the infrastructure level, right? So in terms of just dialing it back a little bit. So we use mixed net technology. So that's not a Web3 technology. It's something that was actually, it's a concept that was invented by David Shaw back in the 1970s, 1980s, when you were alive and born. So then what we do is we provide layer 0 privacy on a layer 1 blockchain. So our blockchain is a Nix blockchain that's built in Cosmos, Cosmos SDK blockchain. So we're a little bit unique in the sense that I mentioned previously that we're web agnostic, but chain agnostic, right? So what we see our role in it is basically, so as more cross-chain functionalities, they get improved, it's going to be, it's going to be something that is the norm in future, right? We want to make sure that all these transactions and interactions occur in private, right? As a default. So, especially DeFi, health transactions, and this kind of data. Actually, it doesn't necessarily have to be your crypto transactions or health data. It's anything that's nobody else's business, right? So, as these kind of transactions have to occur at speed, so we are consistently optimizing the mixed net performance to ensure that there's low latency as much as possible. So we do things like little tweaks, like switching our output formats from Sphinx to Outfox, I think. So if you want more technical details, therefore I was just over there, so have a chat with him. At the end of the day, how we see NIM is that NIM equals to metadata privacy for cross-chain interactions. So if we actually are integrated in every project in Cosmos, then it means that these kind of cross-chain transactions occur via the mixed net, which makes it private by default. You don't have to, as a user, you don't have to add on anything else. The responsibility lies with the builder, and you integrate it, and then voila, there you go. So I think it'd be pretty cool and pretty bold to say that we kind of think that NIM can actually be the privacy network layer for IBC. So yeah.
That sounds pretty cool, yeah? Ooh.
Come on, guys.
Sounds pretty cool, right? I think it's needed. So I think we're kind of, and I'm looking at time, want to make sure we're good. We got a couple more time for some questions. But we're kind of talking about complex systems here, right? So kind of maybe a question directed a little bit secret, but I think all of you could maybe jump in. But there's a challenge in balancing privacy and transparency in the blockchain, like you were kind of mentioning. Secret Network has privacy-preserving smart contracts and has a unique approach to this. So how does Secret Network, and this kind of could go to you guys as well, how does Secret Network navigate the delicate balance between privacy and transparency in the blockchain world, particularly with all that's happened post-Tornado Cash? It's kind of another question.
Yeah, privacy is a bit of a bad word these days, with Tornado Cash and Binance delisting some of the privacy tokens. So and then the US regulatory action is crazy. So privacy is a loaded term. So great question, how do we balance transparency with privacy? And I'll go back to what I said earlier about the fact that with Secret, you have the control of when you unlock the data. So it's not like it's forever locked up and nobody can read it. You have the ability to reveal it to somebody, your accountant, you can reveal that data. So that's how we balance that delicate balance between transparency and privacy, is that it's private, it's your choice when you want to share that data. It's not automatically transparent. It is automatically like default private, and then you share it when you want to or when you need to. And I think it's really important to be able to have those two elements in there, because you need to be compliant.
So I want to kind of keep on the topic of privacy, but pivot to another player in the space. I'm actually talking about you. I looked at you, but I was talking about you. So you mentioned mixed net technology. So with NIM's mixed net technology promising to obscure internet traffic metadata, how do you see this altering the narrative around privacy in digital transactions and interactions?
I think we can look at it both two things. We've had more time, I'll say three things, but let's stick to two. I think the first thing we'll look at is privacy by design. So right now, love you builders, love you developers, but privacy is just an afterthought in the design right now, right? And interestingly, I think it should not be the case because, because this panel is basically how does cross-chain functionality, how the importance of it to actually make sure that Web3 and Cosmos is a success, right? How do you make it a success? Onboard the next billion users onto whatever you're using, right? So mainstream adoption. So basically, so the problem of privacy in Web3 is worse than in Web 2, right? And just by virtue of like public ledgers. Now, if we have something that, it's, why are we here? Financial freedom, DeFi, this and that, everything. But if we actually have apps and services and options for users out there, I'm talking about my mom and dad, your mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, whatever, that actually is significantly better than Web 2 out there. We're using WhatsApp and Google because it's easy to use, right? But if you're saying that, I think what we're talking about here in terms of cross-chain functionality is ease of use, speed, low transaction fees. So if I'm able to just, send my mom something in terms of money or whatever, and then we know that it's private, and like the default is privacy, the default that is easy, the default is there's a variety of, tokens that we can use, that itself is a better option, and that is what users would want to choose to use, right? So the second thing is that, so in terms of changing the narrative, if builders know that that's a demand, then they will build for it, and then more users will use, and that's how we actually make Cosmos and that Web3 a success. Now, the second pillar I want to talk about is the portability of privacy, right? So portability, maybe it means something to different people. What I'm saying is, previously I talked about cross-chain transactions and interactions occurring via the mixnet, right? If you're going to make it easy for dApps on any ecosystem or generate apps like Telegram to actually, occur via the mixnet, that is really important, and you just, at the end of the day, I talked about, it's all about the users, right? Why are you building? So that somebody will use your app, your services and products, right? And we're talking about solving for real world challenges like financial freedom, being able to pay for stuff, if I'm not earning X amount of money via fiat, right? I just love that this way ETHCC, somebody had to transfer me money, and then from the US, I'm here, we don't use Venmo or whatever weird thing that you guys use in the US. And they're like, crypto or fiat? I was like, crypto, of course. Like, it was so easy. It's like, which crypto do you want to use? Like, I love that. We already have this sort of like portability within the ecosystem. I think in terms of cross-chain, that's great. So as we expand from Cosmos to Ethereum, Polkadot, and whatsoever, eventually we go out into the real world, and I think that's the most important thing.
Pivoting to KYVE, you guys are kind of known as a pioneer in blockchain data management. Would you agree?
I hope so, yeah.
I feel like the word pioneer is always so strong. Like, I think it's a great word for you guys. I was wondering if you could maybe discuss some of the nuanced challenges that you faced in the process of standardizing, validating, and permanently storing vast amounts of data from different chains.
Yeah, I actually think the biggest challenge we have there is that when every one of you thinks of blockchains and interacting with a blockchain, it's kind of like always immutable, right? It's always final, because the writing is, right? When you guys create a transaction, it's definitely not going to change. But actually, what a lot of people don't realize is when you read from the blockchain, the data is not directly coming from the blockchain, right? It's actually coming from a server that isn't even a validator. It's basically just reads the data from the blockchain, does a direct copy, and then sends it to you as the user. But you don't actually know on your side if you actually got the right response. And that's actually something that we thought was kind of given by default. We always thought like, when we request this blockchain, the data we get, that's final. And it should be, right? Because otherwise then my accountant would be pretty mad at me if like he's requesting our blockchain, suddenly there's this big transaction missing. We're like, well, I don't know, it's on the blockchain. I don't know why you didn't get it. And I think this was actually very interesting for us to see how fragile still this like RPC, I want to get the data infrastructure is, because it actually fails more often than you think. I'm also curious out there like how many accounting mistakes have been already made because the blockchain data was not returned correctly. I think this was the biggest kind of challenge for us dealing with this, and also the reason why we created KYVE was really about making sure that when I request the data, I know it's valid, I know it's correct, and I can work with it. And also quickly maybe tying into the other question with the data privacy, the way KYVE works is basically for us, like a user can decide where they want to store the data. So KYVE itself, we don't store the data, we just validate it. But you could choose, for example, like a secret network, like a NIM, like an Arweave, to choose where you want to store your data, kind of like then enable like, oh, I need this fine if this data is transparent, or like, oh, it's better if this data would, for example, be like encrypted or something like that.
Cool. So great answer. And looking at the time, I think we have to wrap it up here. So I have one final question around the horn for the panelists here. So as we look towards the future of the decentralized world, cross-chain functionality and the innovations we've discussed today will play a significant role. Yes? Agreed? I think we all agree with that. Can each of you share, oh, this is good, one bold prediction or vision you have for the Web3 Cosmos ecosystem in the next 5 to 10 years? And what role do you think your project and cross-chain functionality will play in shaping this future? Boom.
In 10 seconds.
Yeah, and you have exactly 1 second each. Go.
Yeah?
I believe that we will be able to have the freedom to live our digital lives the way that we, the internet generation, has never ever known before. And I'm talking about having choices that are actually your choice, you know, without compromising your human rights like privacy, or in terms of which wallet you can use or which app you can use. Like, I can only speak to my mom via WhatsApp because that's what she only knows how to use. You know, I want it to be an actual choice, right? And let's talk about Cosmos, right? I believe that I know there are certain brands that didn't want to be very aligned to Cosmos itself, and I don't think that's a very, you know, wise decision to make or something to just proclaim. But maybe, oh, actually no, I think that, you know, Web3 should learn a little bit from the traditional world where consumer behavior actually matters. And if Cosmos apps built on Cosmos is going to be a choice that consumers actually intentionally make to choose an app to use, because, you know, we're going to educate everybody about Cosmos, right? And therefore everybody's going to love Cosmos, right? And because everything that's built on Cosmos is amazing. Then I think that in the same way people choose brands in, you know, the traditional world right now, they would choose dApps or any sort of Web3 product because they know that's built on Cosmos, and they know that anything that they use, there's privacy by default, because all of you Cosmos projects are going to use NIM, isn't that right?
Correct. 5 to 10 year predictions, go.
All right, so if I were giving every blockchain a report card, I would write on Cosmos's report card, plays well with others. And
like
that's
that.
the thing, I think that's the most important thing that we need for mass adoption is blockchains that play well together, because the average person on the street does not want to deal with a bridge. I imagine trying to teach your grandmother how to use a bridge and then telling her, but be careful because you might get hacked. It's just like the whole thing is crazy. So we need more blockchains that work together. I would say my 5 to 10 year prediction for blockchain or Cosmos and the whole ecosystem is that no one will know the names of the blockchains. We'll just interact with cryptocurrency, with tokens, and we won't even think of them as cryptocurrency. We'll think of them as like interacting with tokens. And then in terms of how Secret will help to bring that vision to fruition, I believe that mass adoption is also going to presuppose the concept of privacy by default. I'm so loud. My last name is Loud, and so sometimes it gets away from me. So privacy by default, I think, is really important. And as we begin to do cross-chain privacy, that's going to be an essential component to having adoption of blockchain across the board.
Fabian.
Yeah, I think I would actually very much agree to you. I also, my big prediction is actually that, as you said, like for me, the end user in the end, they will not care about which blockchain they actually use, right? I mean, bet half of you guys came here by Uber, and I also bet that of the half of you guys, 80, 90, 99% don't even know the tech stack of Uber. Like, who knows which database they're using? Who knows which, I mean, I don't know, right? I don't know if you guys know better, right? Which queuing system, which database they use, which privacy they use.
I think they're on Akash network.
Yeah, probably, right? They're definitely hosting there, I guess.
I'm just guessing.
Right? Must be. So I also think, like, in the next 5 to 10 years, we will kind of like shift away from this, like, tech marketing approach, right? Kind of like to actual, like, end consumer apps building and utilizing blockchains as if they are utilizing a normal database right now. I actually think this is like the biggest thing. Like, if we want to go towards mass adoption, then we need to get rid of the hard tech factor, because the mass adoption is not hard tech. But I think especially for us, it's more like the B2B, like chains and projects, right? Like working with the others, like every single project like optimizes in one thing it's doing best, right? When I'm building my application on Uber, right? Like I want to use like this thing for that, this thing for that. But in the end, they all need to communicate with each other. So this kind of like my prediction will be like, well, there will be more B2B on the blockchain side of things, and then the end state applications, they will use whatever tech works best for them, and it's going to be blockchain.
Thank you for those predictions.
Do we come back all together here in 5 years' time and talk about how things have changed since our prediction?
Yes.
And, yeah?
Set your
Let's do
calendars.
that.
Everyone pull out your phones.
Right.
Set your calendar for 5 years. NFT Factory. Not the one that I went to on accident earlier and I was 20 minutes late, but this one. Because we'll be here 5 years. Can we get a round of applause for Lisa, Candace, and Fabian? Thank you, guys. I think we have one more panel after this, but maybe we'll take a quick 2-5 minute break and we'll come back.
All right, we're going to talk about usability. Can you guys hear me in the back? Kind of, maybe. Okay. We're going to talk about usability, one of the biggest things that we need to focus on for mass adoption. So I'm here with my lovely panelists today, Swan and Rodrigo, not Rodriguez. Rodrigo. So Swan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, I'm Swan. I'm a product manager for the full stack team at Evmos. I joined the space around like 5-ish months ago, like Evmos and Web3. So it's really nice to finally meet everyone in person, also in like my first Europe crypto event. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here and talking about usability.
Rodrigo?
So I'm Rodrigo. I've been a freelance developer for around 10 years or so. I've been into blockchain for, I don't know, since 2017, 2018. I found Cosmos around 2.5 years ago, and then I found Akash and became an Akash contributor.
Amazing. Can you guys hear everybody back there? Kind of? Okay. Maybe we could have a little boost on the volume. All right.
I don't know if you heard me, but...
So let's start by talking about roadblocks. What do you think are the roadblocks to user experience and Web3 adoption, specifically in the area of user experience? How is it preventing us from getting mass adoption in the Web3 space? Who would like to start?
Hi, yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, by definition, like, usability, like a usable product is something like where a person or the team who develops that product, you're ensuring that the user is able to achieve whatever goal you're trying to help them achieve with that product, and also by maintaining an excellent experience out of that. There's a lot of roadblocks, obviously, and even from like my first few months within crypto, there's a lot, but maybe like 2 of them that I can really think of is like wallet setup, the whole wallet installation process, and terminology. So if you think about it, like even when I started my first time setting up a wallet, it was so complex, so cryptic. Everyone is telling me, do not lose your seed phrase. Like write it on like 10 pieces of paper, because put it in like your mom's home, put it in like your cabinet, put it in your grandma's home, because maybe your house will burn down and like you're gonna lose it. So it's super cryptic, and like for advanced users, like this is like normal lingo. Like we all know this. The basic message here is like, don't lose your seed phrase because no one's gonna be able to help you. But to a normal, non-crypto savvy user, when they hear it, it's very deterring, and it's even more cryptic, and it really, really prevents someone from just like setting up a very simple wallet. And you take away the simplicity with that crypticness. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And what we're saying with all of that is that you have responsibility for your own funds, you have ownership and control, but that's not something that people want to hear, right? Because they don't trust themselves. I think it's a lot about trust. How much do you trust yourself to remember what it is you went into the living room to get when you're just standing there looking around? Our memories are not that great, so how can we be trusted with a seed phrase? Rodrigo?
And I totally agree. non-crypto people usually get scared setting up wallets and keeping their phrase completely safe. We need front ends that make it super easy for them to actually know. You got the little connect button and so they can transact and send everything in just a few minutes or seconds without any delays, which you see delays and then they just say, oh, this platform doesn't work, I switched to another one. So if you have nice front ends and everything, it's a roadblock that needs to be overtaken.
So, Rodrigo, what are you doing with your project to address this concern?
Akash Network now has the Akash console in beta version and CloudMos, which are two front ends which allow anyone to easily deploy any apps or backends, Cosmos validators, and in just a few instances, there's templates there that you can just literally, you just need to change your phrase or your keys, and in a few moments you're up and running, and it makes it super easy. And they're live on the Akash Network already.
And are you seeing people adopt that? Are you getting feedback?
Yes, we're getting a ton of more users, the developers taking advantage of this, both apps, and one of them is open source, and everyone can obviously contribute to it, and it's making it. We're adding features all the time, so it's becoming easier every day.
Swan, what are you doing with your project to address the usability issue?
Yeah, well, besides the awesome EVM extensions that basically came out on mainnet just a week ago, I think, our team is also working on onboarding. So when a user onboards or gets started on Evmos for the first time, we realize that they lack the information, the basic education of like an account setup, of topping up your account with Evmos to get started with Evmos, and basically doing something with your Evmos, like maybe making your first transaction, or even exploring the different dApps we have in the ecosystem. We're actually launching something. We're shipping something in a few weeks, and we really want to tackle like the onboarding experience, getting users started with like the basic simple things in order to just like get one transaction in and like kind of empower the user that like it's actually a very simple thing. Just do this one simple thing, get started, and all the complex things will take you kind of like hand in hand and will walk you through the process.
Amazing. Who do you think is actually nailing it, the user experience? Is there a project out there that you think is very much being easy to use for new users? Either of you.
I love Osmosis. They have a perfect UI, and the secret network dashboard is also amazing now. It makes it super easy to wrap things, and you got all this swapping and trading right there, all the information. If you're new, you get all the blockchain information right on the front page, and that's what we need. I mean.
Well, thanks. That was awesome to hear. What about you, Swan?
Actually, so I want to recall back to like my maybe second week of onboarding, and I really have to say it's Stride, because during like my first month, I had no idea what any of these chains were. I go on their websites, and I have no idea what staking means. I don't know what liquidity is. I don't know what all these different terminologies mean. But like when I went on Stride, there were like palm trees. It was like pink. It was green. It felt really approachable. And when I read the guide, I have no idea what liquid staking is, but the process that they took me through, the flow was, hey, if you have Evmos, why don't you stake it? You'll get liquid stake tokens back, and then we'll send them back to Evmos. And everything was done in just like one UI, and I didn't even have to know what liquid staking was. I happened to have Evmos on hand, so I was like, why not? Let's just get started. And I feel like that was the first action that I needed to realize like, hey, I can actually do this. Like, it seems really approachable. I can learn about it at any time, but like, let me just get one action in. And I think that's one of the critical pieces of like really tackling good UX for normal users, for beginner users, because you need to adopt them into like thinking that like they can do it. It's not something too complex. Anyone can do it.
What do you think about gamification for giving that sense of empowerment and rewarding them for making the first step and the next step Have you seen any projects that are using, have you considered using gamification in your project?
Yeah, actually, we were just talking about it an hour ago with my developers who are over there. Yeah, for sure. Like, I'm not really sure if it's gamification per se, but more of like rewarding the user of like, hey, like congratulations on getting to this step, because we understand that it's really, really cryptic to just like even open up an account, download a wallet extension, and get started. So yeah, for sure. Like we thought of like confettis to kind of celebrate the user kind of like finishing up, setting up an account, and then finishing up, like topping up an account via an on-ramp. Yeah, to kind of like celebrate those like little steps that seem really big, but for the end user, it's kind of like to welcome them into the ecosystem, into the flow, and say, you can do it.
I'm going to use the example of Duolingo because I used Duolingo years ago, and it was not a great experience. But I just started using it again. Like I think I'm on a 19-day streak. So 19 days ago, I started using it again, and they've really amped up their gamification and just the experience. You get so motivated to do the next step and the next step. So I'm taking inspiration from that, and I want to make Secret Network onboarding to be similar and all of our dApps, just to use that example of how to make the user feel like they're in a process and the next step is achievable for them. Do you have any other examples of gamification that you like?
Yeah, I'm all in favor of Web3 gaming. As a gamer, I believe it's gonna draw in a lot of new folks. The gaming industry is huge, and once there's real good Web3 games, they're gonna buy in. Like we already buy our own video games. We purchase our guns or whatever virtual game things, and now that once you're able to trade them as NFT and play them on a real cool game, it's gonna draw a lot of attention to blockchain.
That's an interesting point. It's a little bit of a tangent, but I heard Yatsui from Animoca Brands talk this morning about how people in the US are not that interested in having NFTs or sellable tokens inside their games, but in Asia it's very much accepted, and so it's growing much faster there. So really interesting points. Definitely not, well, kind of part of our mass adoption, right? Because I think Asia is succeeding better in mass adoption of Web3 because partly there's a clear regulatory environment, and the US's environment is a mess right now, except for Ripple. So let's talk about MetaMask. MetaMask is something that is, it's one of the more common wallets, and up until now, Cosmos has not been super integrated with MetaMask. So I'm just wondering if you have any insights into how the integration with MetaMask with Cosmos will impact the ecosystem.
In my opinion, it's gonna bring a lot of people into Cosmos too. I mean, Evmos kind of uses MetaMask already and Secret Network too, but now with this thing, MetaMask Snaps that's coming out soon, it's gonna allow Cosmos tokens to be used with MetaMask. So there's, I don't know how many million of people who use MetaMask, and like you said, it hasn't been totally compatible right now, but once it is, I mean, it's going to be huge for Cosmos.
So you think it's going to spur more adoption?
Yes, I do.
Thanks.
I mean, at least on Evmos side, it's definitely a plus for us because our whole motto is on cross-chain deployment. We want to empower developers and users alike in Ethereum to come into Cosmos and basically break that barrier of onboarding from a technical and from an end user perspective that, yeah, you can come into Cosmos and learn about it in a very easy way. And MetaMask Snaps is definitely a way for us to adopt more users from Ethereum into Cosmos.
Exactly.
Yeah, it fits into our whole story, so it can only benefit us.
Amazing, thanks. All right, last question for you guys. How important is cross-chain, going back to our previous panel, how important is cross-chain for user experience?
Like the other guy from KYVE said, the users probably don't really care what chains they're interacting with. They don't really know the protocols or the infrastructure that an app is being run on. But in the end, once we can trade NFTs from Stargaze to Chronos to Evmos or everything, it's leading cross-chain. And infrastructure and everything's working towards implementing tokens from different chains and different platforms. So it's inevitable. It's going to happen, and it's what we need.
Thanks. What about you, Son?
Yeah, it's very important. Who would have known chains talking to each other would be so important in Cosmos, right? It's something not as revolutionary in Web 2, but in Web 3 it is. But as great as it is, there's still some like drawbacks to it, right? Like within Cosmos, every chain is sovereign. Like it's all about sovereignty, and UX is probably really great to that one chain. But if you try to translate UX from one chain to another chain, you have to familiarize yourself again to that chain's processes, the different on-ramps, functionalities, etc. So you would be onboarding yourself to different chains forever. So there is a drawback to it, but if you leverage that interconnection, that IBC, the IBC protocol, with arguably, I would say, with our EVM extensions, it would open up even greater UX opportunities. Like even from last week, from our appearing release, we have all of our outposts with Stride, Osmosis, our EVM extensions. Go check it out. But even with like our Stride outposts, like I told you about liquid staking, but now, or we plan to, and I think it is, with just one click, users can liquid stake their tokens and receive it back. Before, you would have to, like the user would have to go through all of these manual steps to liquid stake their tokens, to send it back, to see that they got it. But now with just one click, that will all be done. And honestly, this is not a revolutionary concept in Web 2. A user should not have to care about all the steps in between putting in an input and expecting an output. Now we replicate that UX practice via our extensions. And this is just the beginning for Evmos. So yeah, just to kind of go back to your question, yes, IBC is very important, but we also want to leverage that with our EVM extensions to make UX possibilities even greater.
Right, so you want to make cross-chain easy.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's it for our panel. Do you have any final words to share with our audience today? 10 words or less.
Try out Akash. You just need to find the Akash console, and there's a few templates there. You'll have, it's a lot more affordable than AWS and all the centralized stuff, so it's perfect.
Thank you.
That was more than 10 words.
You took your 10 words.
Try out an extension for the first time. Yeah, try out your first extension for the first time. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Can we get a round of applause for our panelists today?